Over the last two videos, we've looked at some of the key findings of the 2022 State of the Nonprofit Sector Survey, learning that nonprofits adapted to the realities of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that funders adapted the ways they funded by providing more dollars and, importantly, more flexible funding. We also found that there are many racial disparities in nonprofits' experiences and their levels of funding, and we saw that organizations remain concerned about funding, staffing, and meeting demand going forward. So what can funders do to reduce racial inequities in funding and support nonprofits into the future? Let's start with trust-based philanthropy. You can practice trust-based philanthropy both in actions you take today and in making longer-term structural changes to how you fund. Give multi-year, unrestricted funding. Do the homework on nonprofits to save them time in the vetting process. Simplify and streamline paperwork. Be transparent and responsive. Solicit and act on feedback. And offer support beyond the check. What else could trust-based philanthropy look like? Here are some recommendations we heard from survey respondents. You can start with easier actions for your institution as you plan for bigger shifts. Here's what you can do. Give flexible funding, such as unrestricted funds, including general operating support. Understand and fund full costs. Fund operations like technology, training, infrastructure, and staff hires. Fund organizations to have a surplus or a rainy day fund, and at the least, don't penalize nonprofits for having a surplus or reserves. Fund at levels that let nonprofits pay living wages to all staff. Be upfront with nonprofits about whether you can provide multi-year funding. Provide funding upfront or at the very least on time. Finally, change inequitable funding practices within your own institution. Seek out and fund organizations that are led by people with relevant, direct experience and personal relationships in the communities you're supporting. Pay particular attention to BIPOC-led, community-centered organizations that may have been excluded from traditional funding pathways. Support them with funding or advice and introduce them to others in your network who might be able to support them. Make nonprofits and community leaders co-designers in grant-making initiatives. Involve them in decisions on what and who to fund. Have and apply an informed lens on race and equity. Stop practices that can exclude smaller and newer organizations. Make funding applications easier, and don't disqualify organizations based on minor errors or omissions. Finally, remove costly requirements like audited financial statements. The COVID-19 pandemic instigated and accelerated bold ways of funding. In the past 2 years, we've seen a lot of innovative ways to fund organizations. Let's keep it up. These changes require rethinking the way many of us fund nonprofits. They push us to be more equitable and to transfer power and money to those closest to the solutions. And we believe they'll lead us to a more vibrant and equitable future. Visit nff.org to get started and to explore the full results from the 2022 State of the Nonprofit Sector Survey.